Level 1. Trash Demons. Level 1 represents the bottom of the barrel in biblical demonology. Evil spirits so incompetent and powerless that they can barely accomplish their malevolent purposes. These demons possess no redeemable qualities whatsoever, failing at even the most basic demonic functions like temptation, possession, or spiritual corruption. The defining characteristic of trash demons involves their complete inability to maintain any form of sustained evil influence. When these spirits attempt possession, they are easily expelled through simple prayer or basic spiritual resistance. Their temptations prove so obvious and clumsy that even spiritually immature believers can recognize and reject their influence without difficulty. Trash demons typically manifest through minor annoyances rather than serious spiritual threats. They might cause brief moments of irritation, small household disturbances, or fleeting negative thoughts, but they lack the power to create lasting spiritual damage or lead anyone into serious sin. Their presence often feels more pathetic than frightening. These demons serve primarily as spiritual training wheels for beginning believers, providing opportunities to practice basic spiritual warfare without facing genuine danger. Experienced spiritual warriors often ignore trash demons entirely, focusing their attention on more significant supernatural threats that require serious spiritual intervention. The biblical evidence for trash demons appears in passages describing spirits that flee at the mere mention of Jesus' name or are cast out through the prayers of new converts. These entities represent the spiritual equivalent of spiritual weaklings, demons that even other demons look down upon within the hierarchy of evil. Biblical examples of trash demons include the unclean spirits mentioned in Mark chapter 1 that immediately recognize Jesus' authority and beg not to be destroyed before he even addresses them directly. These spirits demonstrate such obvious weakness that they cannot maintain their presence in the face of divine authority, fleeing without putting up any resistance whatsoever. The spiritual attacks of trash demons typically involve creating minor distractions during prayer time, generating fleeting doubts about basic biblical truths, or causing small interpersonal conflicts that resolve quickly without lasting damage. Their influence resembles spiritual mosquito bites rather than serious spiritual wounds, annoying but ultimately harmless to anyone with basic spiritual immunity. Trash demons often cluster together in groups because individual demons at this level lack sufficient power to accomplish anything meaningful alone. Even when working collectively, their combined efforts rarely produce results more significant than temporary spiritual discomfort or brief periods of spiritual confusion that clear up naturally without intervention. The theological significance of trash demons lies in their demonstration that not all supernatural evil operates at the same level of threat or sophistication. Their existence provides evidence that the spiritual realm contains hierarchies and gradations of power, with some entities posing minimal threat to committed believers, while others require serious spiritual preparation to confront effectively. Level 2. Bad Demon. Level 2 demons possess slightly more capability than their trash tier counterparts, but remain severely limited in their spiritual influence and supernatural abilities. These demons can occasionally achieve minor victories in spiritual warfare, but lack the consistency and power to maintain long-term corruption campaigns against their targets. Bad demons typically employ one-trick approaches to temptation and spiritual attack. They might specialize in a single type of sin or spiritual weakness, repeatedly using the same methods without adapting to their target's spiritual growth or changing circumstances. This predictability makes them relatively easy to identify and counter once believers recognize their patterns. The spiritual influence of bad demons extends to creating temporary spiritual setbacks rather than permanent spiritual damage. They might cause brief periods of doubt, minor moral failures, or short-lived spiritual dryness, but they cannot sustain these attacks long enough to cause lasting harm to committed believers. These demons often resort to employing spiritual gimmicks and trendy temptations to draw people away from faith. They follow popular cultural movements and social trends, attempting to use contemporary issues as vehicles for spiritual corruption. However, their lack of genuine spiritual insight means their attacks often feel shallow and temporary. Bad demons frequently go in and out of spiritual influence faster than seasonal trends. They might gain temporary footholds in people's lives during periods of spiritual weakness or emotional vulnerability, but they lose their influence quickly when believers return to consistent spiritual practices like prayer, scripture reading, and fellowship with other Christians. Biblical examples of bad demons include the spirit that troubled King Saul in 1 Samuel, which could be driven away temporarily through David's music, but kept returning because it lacked the power to establish permanent control. This demon demonstrated enough ability to cause genuine distress, but insufficient strength to maintain consistent influence over its target. The operational methods of bad demons typically involve exploiting obvious spiritual vulnerabilities without developing sophisticated strategies for deeper spiritual penetration. They might target someone struggling with anger by providing additional irritations, or attack someone dealing with financial stress by creating more money-related problems, but they cannot create complex, multi-layered spiritual assaults. Bad demons often serve as spiritual stepping stones for believers learning to recognize and resist supernatural influence. Their attacks provide enough challenge to develop spiritual discernment and warfare skills, without overwhelming new believers with threats beyond their spiritual maturity level to handle effectively. The limitation of bad demons becomes apparent in their inability to coordinate with other supernatural entities or maintain influence across multiple areas of a person's life simultaneously. They typically focus on single issues or problems, lacking the spiritual bandwidth to orchestrate comprehensive spiritual attacks that address multiple vulnerabilities at once. These demons represent the spiritual equivalent of amateur spiritual warriors. They understand basic principles of temptation and spiritual attack, but lack the experience, wisdom, and power necessary to execute sophisticated spiritual warfare campaigns that could seriously threaten mature believers or established Christian communities. Level 3, Mid-Demons. Level 3 represents the spiritual equivalent of mediocrity in biblical demonology. Demons that are neither particularly threatening nor completely ineffective. These mid-level demons possess enough supernatural ability to cause genuine spiritual problems, but lack the power and sophistication to create lasting spiritual devastation in believers' lives. Mid-demons excel at creating spiritual background noise rather than dramatic supernatural encounters. They specialize in maintaining steady, low-level spiritual interference that gradually wears down believers' spiritual defenses over time. Their influence feels more like spiritual static than direct spiritual assault, making them difficult to identify and address. These demons typically employ multiple spiritual attack methods, but execute none of them with particular skill or creativity. They might combine temptation with discouragement, add spiritual confusion to moral compromise, or mix doubt with fear, but their combinations lack the sophisticated coordination found in higher-level demonic activity. The primary strength of mid-demons lies in their ability to blend into normal spiritual life without drawing attention to themselves. They create spiritual problems that feel like natural human struggles rather than obvious supernatural attacks. This camouflage allows them to maintain long-term influence without triggering strong spiritual resistance from their targets. Mid-demons have become increasingly corporate in their approach to spiritual warfare, following standardized methods of temptation and spiritual attack, rather than developing personalized strategies for individual believers. This corporate approach makes them predictable, but also ensures they maintain consistent, if unremarkable, levels of spiritual influence across large populations. Biblical examples of mid-demons include the spirits of divination mentioned in Acts chapter 16, which provided genuine supernatural information, but lacked the power to significantly impact the apostolic ministry beyond creating minor annoyances. These demons demonstrated real supernatural ability, while remaining fundamentally limited in their spiritual influence and effectiveness. The spiritual attacks of mid-demons typically involve creating persistent but manageable spiritual challenges that require ongoing attention without demanding immediate crisis intervention. They might generate chronic worry about finances, maintain low-level marital tension, or sustain mild depression that interferes with spiritual growth without completely derailing faith. Mid-demons often specialize in exploiting the gap between spiritual knowledge and spiritual application, targeting believers who understand biblical principles but struggle to implement them consistently in daily life. They excel at creating circumstances that make obedience more difficult, while providing plausible, non-spiritual explanations for spiritual struggles. The theological significance of mid-demons lies in their representation of the majority of supernatural opposition that most believers encounter in normal Christian living. They provide the steady spiritual resistance that requires consistent spiritual disciplines and community support to overcome effectively. These demons serve as the spiritual equivalent of background radiation in the supernatural realm, always present, mildly harmful over time, but not immediately life-threatening to spiritually healthy believers who maintain basic spiritual protection through regular prayer, scripture study, and Christian fellowship. Level 4. OK demons. Level 4 demons represent the beginning of genuinely respectable supernatural entities within biblical demonology. These elevated evil spirits possess the ability to create significant spiritual challenges and can maintain sustained campaigns of temptation and spiritual attack against committed believers. OK demons demonstrate the capacity for introspective spiritual warfare, adapting their methods based on their target's spiritual strengths and weaknesses. They can analyze believers' prayer lives, study their biblical knowledge, and adjust their temptation strategies accordingly. This analytical ability makes them considerably more dangerous than lower-level demons. These demons often specialize in exploiting specific spiritual vulnerabilities with impressive precision. They might focus on pride in spiritually mature believers, target sexual purity in young adults, or attack faith during periods of suffering and loss. Their specialization allows them to achieve deeper spiritual penetration than generalist demons. The influence of OK demons extends beyond individual believers to affect entire spiritual communities. They can create division within churches, promote false teaching among spiritual leaders, or generate spiritual apathy within congregations. Their community-level influence demonstrates sophisticated understanding of spiritual dynamics. OK demons enjoy significant respect from casual spiritual observers who cannot distinguish them from higher-level supernatural entities. Many believers mistake encounters with level 4 demons for encounters with truly powerful evil spirits, giving these demons more credit than they deserve while underestimating the existence of genuinely dangerous supernatural threats. Biblical examples of OK demons include the Python spirit mentioned in Acts chapter 16 that provided divination services while following Paul and Silas for many days. This demon demonstrated sustained supernatural ability, strategic patience, and the capacity to maintain influence over extended periods while operating within a complex social and religious environment. The operational sophistication of OK demons includes their ability to coordinate multiple attack vectors simultaneously while maintaining plausible deniability about their supernatural involvement. They can orchestrate circumstances that create spiritual pressure while making their influence appear to result from natural causes rather than supernatural intervention. OK demons often target spiritual leaders and mature believers specifically because they understand that corrupting influential Christians produces greater spiritual damage than focusing on spiritually immature targets. They invest significant time and energy in developing long-term strategies for undermining effective Christian ministry and witness. The spiritual attacks of OK demons typically involve creating complex moral dilemmas that have no clear biblical solutions, generating theological confusion about secondary doctrinal issues, or establishing patterns of spiritual compromise that gradually erode spiritual sensitivity and effectiveness over time. These demons represent the level where spiritual warfare transitions from basic spiritual hygiene to requiring genuine spiritual maturity, discernment, and often community support to recognize and resist effectively. They mark the point where individual spiritual strength alone may prove insufficient for complete victory. Level 5. Good demons. Level 5 demons represent genuinely skilled supernatural entities whose demonic abilities are undeniable regardless of personal spiritual opinions about their methods or motivations. These demons can carry their own against almost any spiritual opposition and demonstrate consistent excellence in supernatural warfare. Good demons possess sophisticated understanding of human psychology, biblical theology, and spiritual warfare principles. They can engage in complex theological discussions, quote scripture accurately, and present compelling arguments for spiritual compromise. Their intellectual capabilities often surpass those of many human spiritual leaders. These demons demonstrate remarkable versatility in their spiritual attacks, seamlessly transitioning between different types of temptation, spiritual deception, and supernatural manifestation. They can operate effectively in multiple spiritual environments, from charismatic worship services to academic theological discussions to personal prayer closets. The spiritual influence of good demons extends across multiple generations and cultural contexts. They can establish spiritual strongholds that persist for decades or centuries, influencing entire family lines, communities, or religious movements. Their long-term strategic thinking sets them apart from demons focused on immediate spiritual victories. Good demons often form deep spiritual connections with their human targets, creating relationships that feel meaningful and beneficial, while gradually leading people away from biblical truth. Their ability to provide genuine spiritual experiences and apparent spiritual benefits makes them particularly dangerous to spiritually hungry believers. Biblical examples of good demons include the familiar spirit consulted by the witch of Endor in 1 Samuel chapter 28, which demonstrated the ability to provide accurate information about deceased individuals while operating within established religious and cultural frameworks. This demon showed sophisticated understanding of human psychology and spiritual dynamics. The theological sophistication of good demons enables them to create compelling alternative interpretations of biblical passages, develop internally consistent but ultimately false spiritual systems, and provide supernatural confirmation for deceptive spiritual experiences. They can operate as counterfeit angels of light with remarkable effectiveness. Good demons excel at identifying and exploiting the specific spiritual blind spots of mature believers, targeting areas where even experienced Christians struggle with pride, ambition, or spiritual presumption. They understand that different spiritual attacks work on different personality types and spiritual backgrounds. The supernatural manifestations of good demons often include genuine healing, accurate prophecy, and powerful spiritual experiences that feel authentic and beneficial to recipients. Their ability to provide real supernatural benefits while pursuing ultimately destructive spiritual goals makes them extremely difficult to identify and resist. These demons represent the level where spiritual warfare requires not only personal spiritual maturity, but also accountability relationships, pastoral oversight, and sometimes professional spiritual warfare ministry to address effectively. They mark the point where individual believers need community support and spiritual authority to achieve complete victory. Level 6. Great Demons. Level 6 demons represent master-level supernatural entities that operate with extraordinary spiritual sophistication and power. These great demons possess abilities that demand immediate attention and cannot fade into spiritual background noise like their lesser counterparts. Their presence fundamentally alters the spiritual atmosphere wherever they manifest. Great demons demonstrate complete mastery of multiple spiritual warfare disciplines simultaneously. They can orchestrate complex theological deceptions while maintaining powerful supernatural manifestations, coordinate large-scale spiritual attacks while providing individualized temptations, and operate across multiple spiritual dimensions without losing effectiveness in any single area. The spiritual attacks of great demons follow intricate patterns that reveal deep understanding of biblical prophecy, church history, and divine purposes. They can manipulate spiritual timing to coincide with significant religious events, exploit theological controversies to create maximum spiritual confusion, and coordinate their activities with broader spiritual movements affecting entire nations or civilizations. These demons possess the ability to wash any lesser supernatural entity on the right spiritual battlefield. Their names command instant respect from serious students of spiritual warfare across all Christian denominations. Even experienced exorcists and spiritual warfare practitioners approach encounters with level 6 demons with considerable preparation and spiritual backup. Great demons rarely achieve mainstream recognition outside specialized spiritual warfare circles, but they maintain relevance within serious demonology studies across multiple decades and often inspire entire generations of spiritual warfare practitioners. Their influence extends far beyond individual encounters to shape entire approaches to understanding supernatural evil. The supernatural abilities of great demons include perfect timing in spiritual attacks, flawless adaptation to changing spiritual circumstances, and the capacity to maintain multiple complex deceptions simultaneously without contradiction. They can switch between different spiritual attack methods mid-encounter while never losing their strategic focus or tactical effectiveness. Biblical examples of great demons include the Prince of Persia mentioned in Daniel chapter 10, which possessed sufficient power to delay an archangel for 21 days while maintaining influence over an entire empire. This demon demonstrated the ability to operate at both individual and national levels while engaging in direct conflict with high-ranking angelic beings. The strategic sophistication of great demons includes their ability to establish multi-generational spiritual strongholds that influence entire cultures, religious movements, or geographical regions. They think in terms of centuries rather than years, developing long-term plans that unfold across multiple human lifetimes. Great demons often serve as spiritual generals, commanding vast networks of lesser supernatural entities, coordinating complex spiritual campaigns that involve hundreds or thousands of subordinate demons working toward unified strategic objectives. Their organizational abilities rival those of the most sophisticated human military or corporate structures. The theological impact of great demons extends to their role in shaping major historical events, influencing the rise and fall of civilizations, and affecting the development of religious and philosophical movements that impact millions of people across multiple generations. Level 7. Goat Demons. Level 7 represents the pinnacle of biblical demonology. Supernatural entities so powerful and sophisticated that they appear perhaps once in a generation of spiritual warfare. These goat demons operate on a completely different level from all other supernatural entities, demonstrating abilities that seem to transcend normal spiritual warfare categories. Goat demons possess the supernatural equivalent of seeing spiritual reality in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They understand not only current spiritual conditions, but also the historical development of spiritual movements and the prophetic trajectory of divine purposes. Their strategic thinking operates on timescales measured in centuries rather than years or decades. The spiritual influence of goat demons extends to fundamental aspects of human civilization and religious development. They can shape entire theological movements, influence the rise and fall of religious institutions, and affect the spiritual direction of entire cultures or historical periods. Their impact becomes visible only when viewed across multiple generations of spiritual history. These demons demonstrate complete mastery of every aspect of spiritual warfare, from the most subtle psychological manipulation to the most dramatic supernatural manifestation. They can simplify their approach for maximum effectiveness or employ incredible complexity when circumstances require sophisticated spiritual strategies. Their versatility knows no apparent limits. Goat demons sound completely unique in their spiritual signatures, with supernatural presences so distinctive that no other entity can successfully imitate their spiritual characteristics. Their influence becomes instantly recognizable to experienced spiritual warfare practitioners, even when they attempt to disguise their involvement in spiritual situations. The biblical evidence for goat demons appears in passages describing supernatural entities that directly challenge divine authority, lead massive spiritual rebellions, and maintain influence across multiple biblical books and historical periods. These demons represent the ultimate expression of created intelligence turned completely against its divine purpose. Biblical examples of goat demons include Satan himself, as described in Job, Revelation, and the temptation narratives, along with entities like the beast from the sea in Revelation chapter 13. These demons demonstrate the ability to challenge divine authority directly while maintaining complex deceptions that fool entire civilizations. The supernatural capabilities of goat demons include the ability to grant genuine supernatural power to human followers, establish alternative spiritual systems that provide real benefits while leading people away from salvation, and coordinate global spiritual movements that span multiple cultures and historical periods. Goat demons possess complete understanding of divine purposes and prophetic plans, using this knowledge to create maximum spiritual confusion and opposition at crucial moments in salvation history. They can anticipate divine actions and prepare countermeasures that require direct divine intervention to overcome. The theological significance of goat demons lies in their representation of the ultimate spiritual opposition to God's purposes on earth. They serve as the final test of spiritual maturity and divine authority, requiring the full resources of heaven to defeat and demonstrating the ultimate triumph of divine love over created rebellion. In 100 years, when the complete history of spiritual warfare is written in theological textbooks, goat demons will be the first supernatural entities mentioned as examples of the ultimate spiritual opposition to divine purposes. Anyone seeking to understand the full scope of biblical demonology must begin by studying these ultimate expressions of supernatural evil.